which is just the capacity to do the right thing at the right time.
Right.
And it's not a binary. It's not that you're either intelligent or you're not intelligent. I mean, some things are absolutely not intelligent, like the floor, right? But or you could say, it depends. You could say that's one, that it only is being a floor, right? But basically, you're more intelligent if you're more able to handle more contexts, right? By producing more different kinds of actions for more different kinds of contexts.
Right.
So it's more of a relative term than an absolute term, if you see what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, one way to think about that is this computation. Mm-hmm. So you're taking context, which is information, and you're producing action, okay? So in that case, it's a great definition because it means even plants are intelligent, right? The plants are going towards the light. And of course, famously it turns out it's John McCarthy. I thought it was Marvin Minsky, but he took credit for it. But John McCarthy's thing, that thermostats are intelligent. Even if they don't have any, CPU in them, if it's just a spring, still it senses when it gets too hot or too cold, and then it turns on or it turns off, right? So that's already a very basic kind of intelligence. So, we've had thermostats a long time, right? And I think it was Hal Hobson of The Economist said to me, I think language is the original AI. And I said, yeah, me too. And he was like, oh, yeah. But language is the technology that we inventing probably isn't the right word, but, it's part of what humans are. We're apes with a lot of technology, with a lot of culture.
Right.
And we've been using it to expand our capabilities for a long time. And so now people get this false idea that, like, artificial intelligence is this new species we've discovered that came from outer space or something, or that the algorithms are things you mine out of the ground, or something like that. That it's just a certain way that things are. To some extent, you could say an algorithm is a natural thing, like logarithms. How did you come up with logarithms? You could say that there are sort of facts out there. But artificial intelligence itself is an artifact that you've built to transform some context into some action, right? And so the A in artificial intelligence means that it's an artifact, that it is someone's responsibility. And so what I'm working on most right now, it sort of never set out to be here, but I wound up, and we can talk about it if you want, doing a lot on policy. So helping people see that it is only ordinary technology. There are things that are different, like using machine learning to build AI means that you're uploading computation you've already done, and in doing that, you're uploading parts of, for example, human culture, and then you get human biases. So that was something that people didn't anticipate because they thought, AI is math and algorithms are math, and so it's going to be perfect and neutral and eternal, and that we could have, eternal life if we upstate ourselves as algorithms and things like that. But no, none of that stuff makes any sense. It's totally incoherent. As I said, math is eternal, but that's because it's an abstraction. It is just sort of true that 2 and 2 is 4. And there's not anything very interesting about that in a way. I mean, not to diss mathematics, it's a cool field. But the point is that in terms of stuff happening, and in terms of there being causes and if there being people who are, or anything that's responsible, then you have to talk about physical processes. And the physical processes are always initiated, well, not all physical processes, but everything that's done by AI, that we would call AI, is initiated by humans.
Basically, I also wanted to ask you, besides everything else, in your opinion, because for some of our listeners, you might be a bit of off-road, so to say, person to this event. What are you doing at Shift Startup Festival?
Well, that's really interesting. What happened was I went and so this is even more embarrassing. Not only did I not know about Shift, but I didn't know about the Council of Europe. But Finland is the host of the Council of Europe this year, and they invited me very early this year, I think like February, to speak at the Council of Europe. I may be off road for Shift, but I'm apparently pretty mainstream now for very, the UN, the Council of Europe, the EU. I had been working with, various things like that. So anyway, they asked me to come and talk about artificial intelligence and what it actually is and how to regulate it. And so people liked my talk there a lot. And they invited me to this, and they said, you have to come. And I was like, well, I like Finland, and, it's the summer. That sounds fun. So I came. So I didn't have I do sometimes talk, not that often, but occasionally talk at business festivals. And I was a professional programmer for 5 years after my undergraduate degree because, in America, we have to pay for our undergraduate degrees. And I paid my tuition off by working, I'm sorry, in the financial industry. But that was that. And then after 5 years, I meant to do it for 2 years, but things happened. Then after 5 years, I went back and did my graduate education, and I've been an academic, kind of public servant ever since. But that means that if I am asked to do a business kind of setting, I know what it's like to be a professional programmer. I can talk about that. Also, because of the fact that it happened to be the financial industry, I know something about that too. How money works and how countries are interconnected. These things I had never studied, but I picked it up a little bit because of this job I had. I also worked for a while during my postgraduate degree. Again, in America, you don't always get paid in the summers or whatever. So I wound up working for Lego. And then twice I worked for Lego. I worked for them in Boston and then again in Billund in Denmark. So in Boston, I was working on, they were trying to figure out how to make a robot product, which of course became Mindstorms, but we were still I was researching whether you even needed to let the kids be able to program or if you could provide a bunch of programs and let them build around the programs, which I thought was a really cool idea. They didn't really run forward that much with that. And then in Denmark, I worked virtual reality, so AI for virtual reality, so that you could immerse yourself, in Legoland, sort of in the VR Legoland, and see yourself at the same size as the things you were assembling. So they wanted us to make AI characters. So that was a lot of fun. That was in 1998, incidentally. Oh yeah, because we were talking about how did I come to Shift. So I don't find it that hard to talk at these things. In fact, I kind of love it. In a way, it's like coming home and doing something that feels natural. I understand a business audience. I think that certainly the people were paying close attention during my talk, so I think I successfully did what was asked.
All right. Can you please very shortly summarize what was your
Yeah. Maybe that's why everybody was paying attention, was because the title was so boring that they knew what they were getting themselves into. It was about how to make AI something that you can regulate. So what is regulation? I mean, at the most basic level, it's about making sure that there's a reasonable distribution, like that you are able to address the concerns of a society and keep a society secure. And so you use a government to take some of the assets and then build some kind of security for the society. So that's the most basic thing. So artificial intelligence, people say, oh my goodness, we don't know anything about it. If we try to regulate it, we'll break it. There's really weird ideas about that. But it isn't the machines themselves that you're trying to regulate. It's the human decisions about what kind of products you're creating and whether you're providing adequate safety. How do you test it? When do you release it? How do you know that it's cyber secure? How do you make sure that nobody else interfered with the code and might have introduced some kind of hazard? So just documenting that you followed proper procedures. People that say, oh, we can't regulate something because we have deep learning in it. It's like, look, you regulate banking and nobody knows how brains work. I mean, we sort of do, but we don't sit there and figure out what every single synapse does. So the same thing, we know how deep learning works. We know how to train it. Sometimes we do a bit of trial and error, but we have some idea of like how many layers do you need and what parameters do you set. And the same way, that's what you're doing with banks. We know enough about what a person does that we keep tracks of the accounts and we see that if they've been stealing or whatever, we should hopefully have enough information. So I was talking about, just helping with that framing, talking about what AI is, getting over this, and trying to talk about the benefit. Why do you want to have government, right? It used to be that, some strong man would come along with a sword or something and say, you guys have to do this, right? But at this point, you can see it more as something that emerges from, organically, cooperatively, that it's a job. It's a job that we want someone to make sure that we all agree we want to live in a society that has certain kinds of assets, including that we want to, for example, run honest businesses. And or most of us do. We don't want to have to deal with dishonesty and all the backhanded, whatever, bribes, all that kind of stuff. But if we think that somebody else in our sphere is doing that, then we feel a need to race to the bottom. And one of the ways to stop the race to the bottom is to get together, figure out what good behavior looks like, and then have it somebody's job to enforce that. It doesn't make sense for me as a software specialist to be the one that is also the one who's in charge of the jail, right? So you get someone else to enforce it, but you come up with the standards of good behavior and you inform the government what they are, right? So that's right now is when we're trying to go through, and that's like I said, I'm just explaining to regulators, hey, we have these things. It's called DevOps. You can look at the revision control. You can see why people did what they did. And if they don't keep documentation, well, then you say it's their fault if their product breaks. The ideal for companies is that they should be able to prove, that they did the stuff right, and that if something's gone wrong, that there's been a crime, someone's hacked into it, and they can identify that, or that the user misused it, right? And so a company, it's in their interest to provide that information to the regulators, so the regulators can help the company, when they do the right thing, get rewarded for doing the right thing. So that was my talk.
All right. Thank you very much for these explanations, and thank you very much for your time. It was my great pleasure to talk, and hopefully both me and our listeners learned something new about AI and maybe got a bit less afraid of using it and reading about it.
Well, at least you should be less afraid that some people have it. You might be a little more afraid than you are about using it when you think about that cybersecurity stuff. So be careful what you buy, and be careful who you buy it from.
Buy right stuff from right people.
Yeah, exactly.
I can keep it as my motto for Shift Festival, because this was my last interview for these 2 days.
Oh, wow.
Now I can go and buy myself some lunch.
It's a late lunch. She's working hard for you guys.
Thank you very much, Joanna, for this interview.
Thank you.
This was Tribecast TRE, episode 30, and my name is Marina. Let me remind you that Tribecast TRE is an independent media working in a close cooperation with Tribe Tampere startup community. I guess you're already tired of my talking, so it's time to wish you a nice weekend. Have a happy autumn and stay warm and tuned.